Hi, good morning, everybody. It is Monday, April 6th, and we are set to welcome Carmine
Broadcasting
in for a
live
little
from the
talk about
financial
some
district of Chicago,
geopolitics
Illinois,
out there
your
and
home
how
of
that
market
could
quotes and
impact your
anecdotes. Here's your
portfolio
host
and
of Trader
get a sense of
Audio,
where things are
Dart
going
Trader
because
himself,
obviously
Jim
geopolitics have been
Zarosli.
driving
To
things here.
applaud the
So,
rebel alliances
without
and the
any
traitor.
further ado,
Take it
Carmine,
away.
how are you doing today? How was your weekend?
Oh, pretty good, Gavin. How about yourself?
Can't complain. Can't complain. Relatively quiet for myself here, but obviously just kind of keeping an eye out on headlines and everything like that going on. And there's been plenty of those, Carmine, since you left. Obviously we got Trump coming up at 1 o'clock. We'll get into that here in a little bit, and a number of headlines just crossing about 20 minutes ago on the Iran front. So we could get into that as well. But where do you want to start, Carmine? You want to start with these headlines that came out about 20 minutes ago?
Yeah, let's start with those.
Yeah, so just going through, I'll read off a few of them here. I'm sure Jim was on earlier, but we had Iran has conveyed a response to the U.S. proposal to Pakistan. This is according to the IRNA. Iranian TV notes that Iran's reply consists of 10 clauses. Reports also included demands encompassing an end to conflicts in the region and a protocol for safe passage through the Strait of Hormuz. And then Iran did reject a ceasefire and reply to the U.S. via Pakistan and demands a permanent end to the war in its reply. So we also have some headlines that Yemen's Houthis noted that they've carried out attacks against Israel on Monday. So we're watching those headlines as well. Then a few other quick notes here, Carmine. Iraq can restore oil exports to 3.4 million barrels per day within a few weeks if the Hormuz shipping resumes. This, according to Basra's oil manager. Also noted that Iraq is yet to receive any written assurance to allow tankers to pass through. That was a report from earlier. And also that drone attacks on southern oil fields have caused major disruptions. So there are a few of the headlines that we are seeing come out here. So, Carmine, let's break into that and tell us. We'll go with those headlines first, and we'll circle back and talk about Trump's post from yesterday. So, what do you think of these headlines that just came out?
Yeah, to me, it's not really surprising. I don't think they were ever going to agree to a ceasefire right away. They're pretty much standing by their 10 points. If you remember, about 3 or 4 weeks ago, they had these 10 points where they're demanding reconstruction, or demanding money for all the damages and everything like that, and they were demanding all kinds of things that the U.S. probably will never agree to, and I think that's probably they're pretty much staying to that proposal. So to me, it's not really that much of a surprise. Uh, if they met all those demands, I'm sure that the war would come to an end. But I still don't think the U.S. is going to come anywhere close to, paying for reconstruction and all that stuff that they wanted before. So it does say at least that there's communications going on. There's been the last week or so. There's been a lot of debate going back and forth whether there's talks. Iran doesn't like to call these negotiations. They like to call them, exchange of messages through a mediator. I mean, you say tomato, I say tomato. So it's one of those types of things where nobody wants to try to say, that hey, they're the ones talking here. But there is definitely some communication going on, but through the media areas like Pakistan, and that's kind of China's kind of involved in that a little bit too. So. Yeah, so that's kind of to me, it's not really surprising. And if we kind of move on to what Trump is going to say today, I expect him to have a this to be a very hawkish press conference. I expect, basically that at the beginning. I think he's going to be very kind of take a little bit of a victory lap because the U.S. rescued the two airmen that were shot down by Iran. I think that's going to be kind of the focus of the first like maybe 10, 20 minutes or so. Then I think he's going to pivot to some of the rhetoric that he used over the weekend on against Iran, and saying that hey, you have this Tuesday 8 p.m. deadline. If you don't. If you don't agree to a deal, we're going to blow up everything. We're going to blow up your power plants. I expect that those types of rhetoric to continue, and we'll see if he uses the same type of language he used in his Truth Social posts. The networks might want to have the press conference on a 1 minute delay or so they can have their bleep buttons ready. But I expect a very similar type of tone from him during that press conference.
Okay, so you're expecting a combative one then,
Yeah,
very similar to what we saw in that tweet. Do you see him? Let me ask you, Carmine. Let's say tomorrow 8 p.m. rolls around and still nothing. Do you think he's going to go after those power plant facilities and the bridges?
I do. I think it's gonna. I so I I think this could actually be paired with some kind of ground invasion of Karg Island, or maybe ground invasion to take the uranium or something like that. That's also possible, but I think at the bare minimum he's gonna go after these facilities. I just don't think they're getting anywhere with these talks at all. If Iran's sticking to these 10 points that the U.S. is never going to agree to, I don't think any administration would agree to any of those points. Uh,
What were some of the points anyway,
well,
Carmine?
they wanted reparations, they wanted reconstruction, they wanted all types of things that the U.S. I don't think will never agree to, and it's just I just don't think that that's good. It would be a reasonable proposal for the U.S. there. So I think that it's likely that I think he will go after those power plants. The one way I could be wrong is let's say for example, the talks kind of make some progress but are not there yet. I don't. I think a chance of a deal by Tuesday is pretty slim, slim to none actually. But let's say, for example, they kind of make some progress and they're saying, okay, we will agree to these points, but we won't agree to these points. And then he might say, okay, we're having some progress. We could delay things. We could delay the attack on that for another week or so, and then we'll kind of be in the same boat this week. That's a possibility too. But I'm leaning towards that they're going to go after the bridges and energy facilities.
Would that constitute a war crime?
I mean, definitely under international law it would, but honestly, international laws really don't. I mean, they're not even worth the paper they're printed on because sovereign nations are sovereign nations. They can do what they want. I mean, it just it's definitely. I mean, it would probably constitute it, technically, but it's just not something that anyone can do anything about. So.
Yeah, yeah, okay. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Do you think the Democrats would push that?
We'll push back on it. Oh, absolutely.
That it is an international war crime, kind of using it as a, midterm rallying
Yeah, oh yeah,
drive.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's going to be, and I think a few Republicans will join in on that. But to be honest with you, I mean, a lot of people say like, oh, I keep hearing this talk all the time. Oh, Trump's not going to do this because of the midterms. The midterms are already lost. The House is gone. I don't think there's any chance the Republicans will win the House. I think it's zero, to be honest with
Yeah,
you. And so I mean, the Senate, I mean, it's possible they can lose it, but honestly, if you lose one, losing another one is really not that different because he still has veto power. So it, 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 I really don't think he has much to lose at this point. I really don't. He's not running again. That's what a lot of people don't understand about the political angle to this. Trump is not running again. So he is. I think he's going to finish him off. I think he wants to go down as the president that took care of Iran. He wants that as part of his legacy, and I think he's going to continue to do it. Now, that doesn't mean that, let's say Trump is also a day trader. He could say, okay, when oil prices are up, he could put out something saying, hey, we're getting close to a deal. We're almost there. And then when oil prices go down, he could say, okay, we're going to bomb this or bomb that. That's how he operates. He's a day trader. But I think he's going to go full bore on this. I really do.
all right. Speaking of day trading, that brings up an interesting aspect. What do you think about some of these trades that have been going off
Oh,
in
I
the
mean,
backdrop?
I just think they're reprehensible. I mean, so Polymarket had. I mean, this is just sickening to me. The Polymarket had a trade up that will the airmen that got ejected from that ejected from the F-15 survive. I mean, you're betting on someone's death. I mean, it's one thing. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think they got into trouble. Similar thing with Nancy Guthrie. They put a post on. Well, she found alive or something. They take that one down too. Guys, don't bet on people's death. Come on, that's just. I mean, you can.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm all for gambling. I'm like, I'll bet on anything where there's an edge. but I think I have an edge in something. But I mean, there's a million things we can bet on. We don't need to bet on people's lives.
Yeah, and I'd agree with that. So, do you have any thoughts on the state AGs going after some of these poly markets, Carmen?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, so I wonder if the Democrats are going to kind of be the party that's kind of against gambling. I kind of wonder this based on how this is going if they're gonna be like against sports betting and all this, and I wonder if that would hurt them with young men. I just wonder because a lot of the rhetoric I see coming out of the party is and Nate Silver pointed this out too, that a lot of the rhetoric is kind of against a lot of these prediction markets and things like that. And I think there's legitimate concerns about them. But from a political standpoint, I mean, if you're trying to, um, you know, broaden your base to a lot of the folks that went away from the party in 2024, that might not be the best idea because I can tell you that the vast majority of people who bet on sports are men. And I think casinos, I mean, poker rooms especially, are 90% men. So that's something I think that they have to kind of keep in mind politically speaking. It's not going to matter for the midterms, but it could matter for the presidential election when there's different sets of people voting. So that's just something to keep in mind.
Yeah, I'd be interested too because I would think that the big cities are big areas where they're trying to expand gambling in the casinos, right? I mean, you got Chicago opening up some downtown casinos and things like that.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's the thing, and Illinois is rapidly expanding gambling. I think JB Pritzker's kind of been one to kind of go against the grain on this. But if you look at California, they have the exact same gambling laws as Texas, almost.
Yeah,
They had no sports betting, no casinos, except for the Indian reservation ones,
reservations.
which are
Yeah,
not really, yeah, which are not really casinos. They really have, it's kind of a strange, uh, you know, gamble. They don't have slot machines. They just have kind of strange Asian games, is what they call them in poker rooms. So it's not nearly as prevalent as like Las Vegas. So that's why a lot of people from LA still go to Las Vegas.
yeah.
So but it just depends on who you're. I mean, I think it's one of those things that's going to be interesting to see how it plays out.
Okay, well, we got a little off tangent there, Carmine, but
Yeah,
appreciate your feedback here. So
sorry.
no, 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 that was me leading you down there. So,
Yeah.
okay, so, well, we've got a feeling of what you think about Trump's 1 p.m. You're expecting him to be combative, so we'll continue along some of the
Yeah,
other things
I
coming
think
out
the
from the
first,
Trump administration.
yeah, I think the first 10 to 15 minutes is going to be really, touchy, so to speak, where he says, "Okay, yeah, we saved the airmen. We're really proud of that, blah blah, and no one in the military could do this. Hats off to our military." But then I think once he starts taking questions, I think it's going to be pretty combative towards Iran.
Blowing him to the Stone Age and
Yeah,
such.
yeah.
All right.
I wonder. Yeah, we'll see if he uses the same type of language that he used in his Truth Social post on Easter
Yeah,
Sunday. So.
I'm sure he's saving one F bomb. But so some of the other things going on here. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, in an interview, said that we need to re-examine the value of NATO after the Iran war ends. So,
Yeah,
what's going on that front?
yeah. This was a very interesting comment because, if you watch a lot of folks on the conservative right have been kind of in the saying, for lack of a better term, screw Europe. They don't really do anything for us. They find our technology companies. They're not even there when we need them. Blah blah. And I think that rhetoric has been gaining and gaining on the right. And I don't think that NATO's under threat because there was actually a law that President Biden passed and signed in 2023 that requires two-thirds of Congress in order to withdraw from NATO. So they're never going to get that.
Yeah,
so I mean, you could I think that the folks that are supportive of NATO, which is still a majority of the country, it's been declining, but it's still a majority of the country. It could take some solace in the fact that if Trump were to try it, he probably would not be able to do it because of that law that was passed. So that's something that I think will keep NATO pretty much safe. But I think he's going to continue to go after him and continue to criticize Europe for not helping and all that. So we're going to see what happens with that.
all right. So watching that closely. We did get the 2027 budget. I know, Carmine, you always religiously talk about how this is just simply a wish list and not going in, but
Yeah.
obviously the one number that's jumping out is the 1.5 trillion for defense. That would be a 44% increase. So, why don't you tell us what they need to get that into place?
Yeah, I think that's going to be a very tall order. Uh, I always say this, no matter the party, no matter if it's a Democrat proposing a budget or a Republican proposing a budget, I always say the White House budgets are not worth the paper to print it on, and this one is definitely not worth the paper it's printed on. I don't think there's I think there's very little chance now. The 1.5 trillion, they'll get a lot of support from a lot of the defense hawks like Lindsey Graham and so forth in the Senate, but a lot of the budget hawks will be against it. So, and that's because it has such a tight majority in the House, and you would need 60 votes in the Senate for the budgets. It really it, it's really not going to happen at all. To be honest with you, I don't see any chance of that happening. So some of these other things that they were proposing, like cuts in climate change, spending, and all that, that's something the Republican Party will rally around completely, but the Democrats won't. So, uh, you still need 60 votes. It's going to be a negotiation in Congress just like every year with appropriations. And to me, as far as the government shutdowns, if in FY27, which is September 30th, is of course is the next one we have to worry about. Um, I think it's unlikely there'll be a government shutdown because of the reason why they have an October recess where they all go and campaign for their seats. So I think it's less likely because of that fact. They all want to get out and campaign for the midterms. So that's it really emphasis for them to at least do a 3 month extension to December where they'll kick the can down the road. So I think chances of a government shutdown this particular year is less likely than it was last year because of that dynamic.
Okay. Just while we're here, Carmine, there's a number of headlines from both Trump and Hassett crossing. I'll read off a few, starting with Trump. Just reiterating, it looks like this is a Reuters interview, reiterating that Tuesday is the final deadline. Says it's a significant proposal for them, but not good enough. Says UK has a long war to go. Not sure what that means. Then we are negotiating, the people we are negotiating with are reasonable and not as radicalized. Wars about one thing: Iran cannot have nuclear weapons. If I had my choice, I would take the oil. Any thoughts on any of those headlines?
Yeah, I mean, I think that that UK has a long war. It might be a
I,
typo. I don't know what that means, but
yeah, I don't know what
but
that's.
Tuesday, I think he's going to reiterate like Tuesday is the final deadline. I think that's something he's going to reiterate in the press conference. Uh, you know, um, it's interesting that he's saying the negotiation for the people he's negotiating are reasonable but not radicalized. I mean, that could be a small positive if you're looking for a deal. Uh, but yeah, a lot of this other stuff is basically things he said before. You cannot have a nuclear weapon and stuff like that. So I think he's going to reiterate those points as well during the press conference.
All right, and then from Hassett, he suggests states should act to handle gasoline prices and is urging them to take action on that. Let's see, increasing productivity should allow the Federal Reserve to lower rates. I don't know how that allows them to lower rates. Expects Fed to lower rates once Warsh gets in there. So, Warsh still has to get confirmed, of course. But anything, what are some of the steps that some of these states could take? I'm assuming removing some taxes. California's probably got a number of levers that they could take, I would think. But what's some of your thoughts on the Hassett headlines?
Yeah, I mean the as far as those, I don't think the states are going to really do anything about gas prices because they want to have that issue for the midterms, right? So if you're a governor from Illinois, which has a very high gas tax, or California that has a very high gas tax, you're not going to do anything about that. You're just going to blame it on Trump and blame it on the war. So that I don't think there's any chance that those states will do anything. And the Republican states that might be willing to go along with what Trump is saying really don't have that really don't have most of them don't really have those high gas taxes at all. So I don't think that'll really change anything much of anything.
All right. So a few other pieces. Trump rescheduled to meet with Chinese President Xi May 14th and 15th in China. Um, Obviously, too far away to say whether or not that'll still go down, but any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think there's a good possibility that could be delayed again if the war is still going on. But yeah, we'll have to see. I think it's going to happen. It's just a matter of when the war ends. I think that's when they're going to decide to do that, and that's what'll happen.
All right. And then obviously, one of the big news over the weekend was Attorney General Pam Bondi being removed, replaced with second in command, I believe, there. I don't know the gentleman's name. But there's been some rumblings about some other cabinet positions as well, possibly being in danger. So, what do you think of the Bondi move, and who do you think could be in danger of being removed from the cabinet?
Yeah, the Bondi thing I think was pretty much expected. I think Howard Lutnick is the one I would watch. Apparently, it was reported that Howard Lutnick was one of the people that was really pushing Trump to do the IEPA tariffs, and Besson was pushing him to do the through Section 301 and 232 like he did last time. So I think Trump is a little upset that the IEPA tariffs got revoked, and he might take it out on the folks that recommended that he use that authority to begin with. So I would definitely keep an eye on Howard Lutnick on that front. It just also just raises a star of raises a star of Scott Bessent. I think he's one of the safest people in the cabinet right now. I think he's really him and Marco Rubio. I think are pretty much in the eyes of the administration the biggest stars in the cabinet right now.
Yeah, it certainly seemed that way. All right. So moving on to Congress, Senate passed a bill to fund a DHS that excludes funding for immigration enforcement, but does not include any of the restrictions on immigration that the Democrats demanded. So, what's going on with this bill, Carmine? What are the next steps that we should be watching for, and is there any major impact from this?
I wouldn't say a major impact. But basically, Trump signed an executive order to pay the DHS workers with existing funds, right? And that kind of really takes like any motivation for a deal off the table, right? So the Senate passed this bill that funds everything but ICE for till the end of the year, right? So, but however, ICE is mostly funded through the big beautiful bill, but there's other things like paying the agents and so forth that need to be funded through appropriations. So, but Trump signed an executive order to pay those folks, and not just ICE, but pay everybody. So, TSA and everybody as well. So, I think what's going to happen is that the House is going to come back from recess on the 13th, and they're going to say, okay, we want to see some progress from the Senate on the reconciliation bill before we move on this other bill, right? Because I think Johnson kind of knows that people. Whenever somebody makes in Congress, whenever somebody makes a promise, pass this now and we'll pass something else later. Just that usually doesn't work out very well. Ask the Freedom Caucus how that worked out for all the other cuts that they wanted, and the Senate's going to work on this reconciliation bill to get ICE fully funded, and because it wasn't fully funded with this other bill. So I think once the Senate makes a little bit of progress on that, they're going to then pass that other bill, and then it'll be completely funded. But it's like a 5 or 6 step process. It should be one, but they have to do it this way because of um, you know how things were going.
Okay. And then the reconciliation bill Republicans are developing. What's going on there?
Yeah, so that's basically a little bit of what I was talking about here. I just wanted to add a couple of things. It's going to be the biggest part of it. Well, not the biggest, but the solid part of it's going to be the funding of ICE, right? That wasn't funded in the appropriations process that the Democrats wouldn't agree to. That's going to fly through Congress. What will be more interesting is that the funding for Iran, if they attach that to the bill, and then that might get some pushback from the fiscal hawks. They might demand some other cuts to offset it, which I think that they'll be able to get in some ways. So if it's a deficit neutral bill, with cuts and Iran funding, I think it could go through reconciliation process. But if it's deficit negative, meaning it raises the deficit, then I think the fiscal hawks will have an issue with it. So it just depends on how what they're going to be able to structure as far as offsets, right? And also, the Republicans are considering connecting the SAVE Act, which is the voting ID bill, to the reconciliation bill, but that's not going to pass muster with Senate parliamentarian. She'll strike that down very quickly, I think. So I just don't see that happening. They say that they're going to try to do it because, so like for example, there's no federal law that you have to be over 21 to drink alcohol, right? But what there's every state has that exact same law. But the reason why all the states are together on that is because the federal government says that we won't provide you transportation funding unless you have that on your books. So they're basically saying with the SAVE Act that they won't provide funding for elections unless you have voter ID, and that's how they can make it a quote unquote funding issue that will pass muster through reconciliation. But I just don't. That's your argument, but I just don't think that the Senate parliamentarian is going to go for that.
All right. So I think that covers everything on the checklist. One thing I did want to ask you about, Carmine, was recent headlines that Trump, the DOJ, saying that Trump would not need to pass over his presidential records. That would certainly be something new. You got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think the court will overrule that. That's definitely going to be overruled. So the presidential records, I think, was right after the Watergate scandal. They passed that. That's a law, so they can't say that we're not going to, do that. So I think the courts will definitely intervene in that. It might go all the way up to the Supreme Court. It might not, but I think that an appeals court will definitely say that he is required to do that, and then. Either the Supreme Court might say, "Yeah, you guys are right. We're busy enough over here. We don't want to deal with it." Then the appeals court decision will stand. That's my guess is how it'll play out.
All right. Let's see, Carmine, just double checking some more Trump headlines crossing. We'll hit you with those and then we'll let you get going.
Yep.
On Iran, he said they have some missiles, drones left. They got a lucky shot, I guess, assuming he's referencing that F-15 shot down. Iranian people will fight the regime when safe for them. We could leave right now, but I want to finish up. Says hopefully it'll be over quickly. Let's see, Iran state TV saying that they just announced a missile launch toward Israel. So there are a few things. Nothing really game changing there, but
Yeah.
last thoughts on any of that stuff.
Yeah, nothing really game changing. I think we're all waiting for this press conference here. He was making these comments, by the way, at the Easter egg roll. So the reporters were asking him. I guess they couldn't wait 2.5 hours till the press conference, so they asked him at the Easter egg roll. But this is basically the comments he said, and we put up a summary at 11:26 as well.
All right. Well, there you go, Carmine. Well, thank you very much for taking the time to jump on with us here. Good having you back. I know you're getting prepped for earnings season, which is right around the corner. So we'll let you get back to that. But again, thanks for coming on. And I'll be in touch with you after he speaks at 1 just to get your thoughts.
Sounds good. Thanks, Gavin. Have a good one.
All right. You